Hey, friends, welcome back to the Spotlight. This is, of course, the show where we talk to the people in pop culture that make the stuff we love. And we have got a real live one here. Raoul Bhaneja, got it, of Star Trek Starfleet Academy, playing, I'm going to say Commandant. It was not Commandant, Commander Kelrick.
Correct.
But Raoul, good evening to you. How are you today?
Good evening. I'm well. You know, it's you reached me at an interesting time as a member of the Starfleet Academy
Yeah.
TV series. So
Man,
yeah, I think I was contemplating what do we talk about today, but I'm going to leave that to you guys, and you can ask me questions, and we'll take it from there.
we wrote our questions on Sunday. So we are not going to be digging into, and again, we're recording this, it's going to be out in early April. So I'm sure all Star Trek fans know that very unfortunately, Starfleet Academy was canceled after its already filmed second season, which is a travesty because Peter and I have been reviewing the show. Actually, this weekend we recorded episodes 9 and 10, which
Great.
you are not in, apparently, because Peter and I were talking about that. I think you're in episode
Nice.
9 for like 2 seconds.
He was nine
Um,
for
I
like
decide
10 minutes.
I'm going to look at New Spraka's psych profile. That's a
Yep.
Oh, there you
clue.
go.
Yep. He was there as a hologram for like a
Yeah,
half
that's
minute.
right. That's
Gotcha.
right.
Holograms
I
count.
just
I mean,
watched it
that's all
today.
Bob Picardo does. He just does the hologram thing.
Yeah, exactly.
Um, but we are
If
super bummed out.
you're fritzing, you know you're a hologram on the show.
Yep.
Right. There you go. Yeah. And then they do all their, because you only see Odette Ferrer. That's the only way you see
Yep,
him. Yeah. He's
yep.
only hologramming. But yeah, it's awesome to have you here. We have a lot of questions that have, and none of our questions have anything to do with cancellation because we didn't write about it. But if you want to talk about it, we are here for that. But I'm going to leave that to y'all. But
Yeah,
um,
I guess I would just say off the top, I think I've got a little statement that I put on my Instagram.
I saw it.
Yeah, and I think there's a note from our showrunners, Alex Kurtzman and Noga Landau, that I think is really great for people to read, which I think for a lot of us who work on the show kind of sums up how we feel. We're still really excited about people seeing season 2, but of
Yeah.
course, we would much rather have people going into a season 2 to watch it to know that there's going to be a season 3.
Right.
When you're in TV for 30 years like me, television is sort of made to be canceled. I think in some ways the show, um, we had a bit of a rough ride to start, and I think a lot of people came on board to the show as it went on. Like people started to understand more kind of where it was coming from. And, I think it would be, I mean, look, I've never been on a TV show where the most famous person in the world with the most Twitter followers and a central advisor to the White House had a commentary on any kind of show I've ever been on. So I think in some ways it sort of set us off in like automatically to be controversial. And in some ways, I think that didn't really help the launch. It
Yeah.
would be nice if we could have had a few more people on board from the beginning, as opposed to, a contingent of fans, but also like of the wider culture, which are the people
Right.
you're also trying to reach. Just go like, well, this is going to be terrible. And I think the sad thing for me is, besides, of course, it was a great job. It's amazing to work with these people. I just love all these young actors, and it's such an incredible opportunity for them. Had I had that opportunity when I was 20 or 25, like I think my life could be different, as a performer. But for me, it's that feeling that we were sort of at a point where we were feeling like, particularly as we got to those final episodes, we all started to feel a kind of shift of
Mhm.
people really start to get it and understand it and get on board with it and get excited for it kind of collectively.
Yeah.
And of course, those are the people who are still engaged and still watching, who those, that number of people or whoever they are.
Yeah.
And then, so I think we were starting to feel like, wow, hey, maybe there's a way where, this will carry on, and there'll be, if the new owners want to bring in other kinds of things, that's fine. Different things will be able to kind of exist maybe side by side. And then the fact that this happened, I think we all just were very disappointed. And I think we were hoping for and thinking that something else was going to be possible. But I encourage people to look at the statement from the showrunners, because I think that kind of
Yes.
comes up in terms of how a lot of us feel about it. And listen, since I've made that announcement, I mean, look, I'm just one cast member, and there needs to be space for everybody to respond in all the different ways they are. But I can just say for me, since I made that response, the vast majority of everything everybody's saying is like how sad they are the show's not going to continue into a
Yeah.
third season. They're looking forward to a second, and how they really hope that we feel how much a lot of people really liked it and loved it. And, that's the cool part. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, I'm so glad. Yeah, I'm heartbroken. I was really enjoying it. We had, I don't know if you're a podcast listener, but I would love to have you sample what we've said about
Ooh,
it. We've had a guest on every week. We've had
yes.
Sean Farrick from Trek Culture was our most recent guest. We have Ellie, little, I want to call it Littlefield, Little Child, also from Trek Culture, wrapping up with us this weekend. And everybody has certainly their critical nits to pick, but I was rating most episodes 7, 8, 9 out of 10 because I'm a rater because I it's genuinely enjoyful. I genuinely enjoyed it. Blah, 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 blah. You know what I'm trying to
English.
say. I hope.
Randall's
Hello,
right.
whoosh. But yeah, I thank you for making the time, and I would love to believe, much like Star Trek the original series was renewed and then renewed and then it was finally canceled after a third season, that maybe an outpouring of love will be there for you guys and maybe it'll make a difference. I'm thinking about doing some writing myself as well because I'd like to really get
A
behind
couple
that.
of people have said to me that there's a petition here, there's a petition here. Like I've started to see those pop up. I mean, I don't know what effect those will have. I'm not
Right.
going to sign them because I'm an employee. So
Right.
That's
Right.
fair.
I want people to do that, and I think for the people who've created the show, part of the reason there's not a whole bunch of conversation about it, or debate from our side about what it all is and what caused it and what didn't, is I think it's our job now to leave it to fans of the show to reflect on what this means for Star Trek right now,
Yeah.
and what it means in the bigger cultural conversation that's going on. And then also, maybe what the future will look like. I mean, we all hope that the show was announced that it wasn't moving forward on the occasion of William Shatner's 95th birthday, which is a Canadian, was kind of
Yeah.
a pain.
Right.
Like, not only is it the 60th year, but it's on Shatner's 95th birthday. Come on, cut me some
I
slack,
know.
guys.
Yeah,
My
But
little
God.
rough, yeah.
Read
I
the
think
room.
it is kind of in the domain of the fans now to examine. And I don't know what is next. Like, I have no idea if we're going to go into a deep freeze, if next week there's going to be an announcement of a whole new thing and what it's going to be. I don't know. I just know the show I'm on is not the one that's going to be a part of the future for now.
Oh
So
man.
that's sad.
Well, you have the sadness of all of us, and we love what you've done. So,
Thank
well,
you.
let's move on. And yeah, I'll backpedal it a little bit. You and I have a mutual friend, Randall, and I told Peter the story when we were waiting to get on with you. So we were on the Star Trek cruise. Gosh, now it's been, oh my God, it was a month ago.
Yeah.
And our last stop was Coco Cay. My wife and I got out. We wandered around a bit. We thought, let's just go back and sit on the ship. There's not stupid kids running around on the beach because it's a big pet peeve of ours. So we get back, and it's the top deck of the ship, and Star Trek 3 is playing on the big screen, which is my favorite Star Trek film. And I slide it in the hot tub, and I start talking to this little skinny guy next to me, and it's Randall, and he tells me that he knows you. And I said, I'm a podcaster. We interview people. And here we are.
Oh,
So, the
Randall,
kind of,
incredible guy.
yeah,
I've narrated. Randall Graham writes really fun, kind of Hitchhiker's Guide esque novels,
Nice.
and
yeah,
I have done the audiobook of two of his, and they've kind of been among the most fun things I've done because there are characters from history. Your Isaac Newton on one page, your Napoleon on another page. They're the most incredible workouts to do as audiobooks.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
I encourage people to go check them out. And if you like what I do, you'll be 14 hours of me speaking in each book. I think you'll
Oh
pretty much
my gosh.
you'll have had enough of me by the end. But yes, Randall is one of the absolute ultra super Trekkies that I know.
Yeah, super great guy, and we've stayed in touch, and he was the one that connected us. So I will put a link to his webpage in the show notes
Yeah,
as long as
great.
your information as well. But let's dial it back to the beginning. I always like to start at the same place. How did you've been in the business for 30 years? You already mentioned that. How did you get started?
Oh, I was, I used to do Shakespeare on the street for change with a group of actors growing up in my hometown of Ottawa, Ontario, Canada, capital of Canada.
Wow.
I got into I love performing, being in front of people. I had an arts education. I went to a local arts high school where I studied drama, but I also really got into music and started my own band in high school, and thus began a kind of dual carriageway career of actor and musician for the
Right.
last 3 decades, and, I studied acting at a place called the National Theatre School of Canada, which has some graduates people would know from the sci-fi world. Some people know Colm Feore, an actor
Oh,
who
yeah.
did, Thor and all this other stuff, super cool. He's a graduate from there, Golden Globe winner and multiple award nominee Sandra Oh, who people know from Grey's Anatomy and
Mhm.
many other shows. She's a graduate of there. And, yeah, and then I moved to Toronto, and basically my career has been back and forth between Los Angeles and Toronto for almost my whole professional life.
Wow.
Work in both places, and done theater and music and movies and TV and audiobooks like Randall's.
Right.
And in the pandemic, had my own blues radio podcast. And,
Yeah.
I'm really someone who's done a little bit of everything:
I
cartoons,
love
video
it.
games, actor
Absolutely.
survival.
Good
All of the
stuff.
things.
Actor survival. Peter.
So you mentioned the blues podcast. So when I was looking through your lengthy things that you've done, was something that I thought was really interesting is that you are also a musician.
Mhm.
You've not only had a stage musical, but you were or are the front man of a blues band. Would you be able to tell us a little bit about that and like maybe some of the artists that have inspired you as a musician?
Sure. Yeah. Well, in that town, in my hometown, Ottawa, per capita, it always had a pretty good blues scene. Well, maybe it's because it's the nation's capital where all the politicians are, and it just makes everyone quite sad. I don't know. But we have a huge thing called the Ottawa Blues Festival, which is a giant. Now, I mean, it's really more a music festival than a blues festival, but it's one of those giant undertakings where all the biggest bands in the world come for 10 days in the summertime and play.
Mhm.
And then those of us who play blues get to play on like the side stage around the back.
Run back.
So I grew up in a town with a lot of blues music, and then when I graduated from the National Theatre School, which is based in Montreal, when I came to Toronto, I had that feeling of being a young actor who, I'd done a play right out of school, and I thought, here I am, world, and you show up, and you're just another actor, you're just another one of the sheep, and
Yeah.
when you're an actor, a lot of your career, not all of it necessarily, and I learned to deal with that as I went on. But in the beginning, I didn't know how to produce a play. I didn't know how to put on my own stuff much, and you're just kind of waiting for the phone to ring. You're waiting for someone to call at your agent to call, you get an audition and all that. And that really started to drive me nuts because I came out of theater school just ready to perform every day of my life. And I met a guitar player, Darren Gallen, who's been my guitar player for 28 years. I met him
Wow.
at a local blues jam,
Wow.
and we're completely different people. We grew up with totally different worlds. In some ways, we don't have much in common, but we really have a bond musically that's been very special. And our drummer, Tom, joined us within the first 6 months. So 3 of the 8 people I play with in my band, I've played with for 28 years.
That's
So it's been a
Wow.
very special kind of connection. But we were really influenced by the Chicago blues of the post-war period for any of you blues
Mhm.
fans. So that would be,
yeah.
I'm a harmonica player, so that's Little Walter, Sonny Boy Williamson, Big Walter Horton. Of course, the blues greats like Muddy Waters, Howlin' Wolf, all those guys. And then we loved a lot of swing and jump music that had come from a lot of it on the West Coast.
Mhm.
In California, there was a great kind of African American tradition of people who transplanted from the South and played jazz and swing and jump music. And then there was a whole generation of modern American blues artists who were influenced by all those people who were a generation ahead of me. So I'm 51. The guys who are like 71 now and older, they were all influences on me because those were guys I could actually meet and talk to. My
Yeah.
Yeah.
friend Hummel in Berkeley, Junior Watson down in the LA area, those guys were huge influences on me. And the really cool thing for me is that those ended up being people I got to play with and record with and make music with. So while I didn't get to ever play with the Muddy Waters, I got to play with the generation after. And that really formed a lot of kind of my taste. And I've put out 7 or 8 records with different outfits, but a bunch with my band. And yeah, I do that. Like I have a gig on Saturday. I had a gig last Sunday. I play jazz as well. Like I sing in sort of a jazz duo
Nice.
doing more kind of crooner stuff, I suppose.
Yeah.
Well,
Nice.
music has been a really huge part of who I am and what I do. I just can't make as much money as I do when I'm on TV.
Right. Yeah, I'm
Fair.
sure not. God, that's awesome. I'm a big music junkie myself. I'm from
Oh, great.
Detroit, so
Yeah,
Motown.
of course you are. Yeah.
Yeah, but I've been singing in choirs and singing in the
Hmm.
shower and singing in my car since I was, 10 years old. So, but no, I'm an absolute music junkie. So I would love to hear you play. We interviewed Tim Russ, Tuvok from Voyager, about a year ago, and it was a little hard to get things going, but when I started talking to him about his music, he lit right up, and
Yeah.
that drove the bus for the rest of the interview. And
Yep.
so, I think that's totally
You
awesome.
usually say with actors because this is the thing actors do in front of the mirror is we just imagine answering questions for people who might have any interest in any shred of anything we do. So, guys, I feel pretty prepared because I probably rehearsed for this in my imagination 1,000 times. Like,
We're-
we're good, we're good. Don't worry, keep going, guys. You're not gonna
oh
spoil
my
anything.
gosh.
Instead, you're going to be turning me down and off.
Oh my. All right, I'll jump back into talking about TV, not even necessarily about Star Trek, but like you described to us. You worked in the U.S., you worked in Canada, you've done TV, films, music. So looking at television, and I ask this question because I generally don't necessarily know if there's an answer. I'm here to learn about it. But when you look at working on a streaming show, and I don't know if Starfleet Academy was one of your first because it's just kind of a newer thing. And so obviously the rest of the time you worked in traditional productions, regular network TV, cable TV. Any differences that you would pick out between the two, the traditional TV type and maybe more of the streaming model? Obviously, there are typically less episodes in a streamer than
Yeah.
there is in a 26 episode, even the old Star Treks were that way, Next Generation, DS9, so on and so forth. But you guys get 10 or sometimes 6 or 8 or 13, somewhere in between. So how do you feel that really changes the workload or kind of the experience or the performance for you as an artist?
Well, it definitely changes the money because you think about it, but when actors, one way people get paid if you're playing a large part as a regular on a TV show is you get paid per episode. So when
Yeah.
Mm.
actors were on terrestrial television, which is a hilarious thing to say when we're talking about space shows, but
Right.
when you were on Voyager, and this isn't a quote from Bob Picardo. Bob didn't tell me what he made. I've never asked, but
Right.
Kate Mulgrew and Bob and Ethan they were all at the New York premiere with me, and they were saying, it's very different to build a relationship with an audience when you're doing 10 episodes instead of 22 or 23. It
Right.
changes the whole way the stories are told. It changes the whole pace. It changes everything.
Yep.
The streaming shows, I've had a chance to do other streaming shows, but I could basically say there's no show like Star Trek, whichever
Mm.
iteration on
Right.
this
I can
scale,
imagine.
$10 million US an episode or whatever it is. Again, I'm not privy to that information specifically. They don't run it by me. As they
Right.
that Raoul, we're looking like we're getting near 10, but rumor has it that it's
Yeah.
approximately that per episode.
Right.
So, that already puts it in a league where it's not like a lot of even, network television shows that people would watch, weekly detective shows, crime of the week,
Hmm.
those shows, like a lot of them wouldn't be quite in that range. I
No.
was looking it up today with my son at dinner because I was like, hey, what do you think Rings of Power cost per episode? And
Oh
I,
my God, most expensive
I
show
saw
ever.
I saw a quote of 58 million US per episode.
Yeah, it was somewhere in that ballpark.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so say 66 times so our fanciest looking episode that you guys saw, Rings of Power, was 6 times that. So
Oh my
what that
gosh.
means, I guess, where I see the difference is in the pacing, the time, the money, the budget, and also we've come out, we may be coming to this other side of streaming where it's less a fight to the death between these streamers, and there is more sort of fidelity towards cost and expenditures. I feel like in the peak of the pandemic, there were all these streaming services battling each other for viewers, and it
Hmm.
Right.
felt sometimes that money was almost no object. I mean, it has to be for spending $60 million on an hour for a streaming show.
Yeah.
Oh, jeez.
But so I do think like soon as big tech became the main players in storytelling in the world, and particularly in Hollywood, I think it's
Mhm.
changed it for the better and the worse, in some ways. Like, I can, the set I see behind you there, the bridge or the lobby, the atrium of the Athena.
Oh,
Yeah.
These are
beautiful
the most
set.
incredible sets. The atrium of the Athena is the most incredible thing I've ever been on in my entire career. It's unbelievable, and it actually pains me now to think that someone's gonna be in there soon pulling it apart, and people are
Oh,
gonna
God.
throw half of it in a dumpster, which is even more sad. But
Right.
Yeah.
the investment that goes into these shows and on this scale is absolutely mind-blowingly huge. So,
Mhm.
I think, but in the act of being an actor in them, you still got a scene, you got 2 actors, 3 actors, 5 actors, and you're trying to make them work, and you have a certain amount of time, so it doesn't really change the work that much. I think, I have a friend who's making a series called Doc, which is a big Fox show, doctor show. And,
Right.
they're doing 22 a season. And, it's like they kind of have a different tempo, different way. It's a different kind of thing. They have some practical effects, they have some visual effects, but it's nothing like what we do. I mean, we're making like a little movie each week. And I
Mhm.
saw episode 1, I saw the pilot 3 times on a big screen because we had various screenings.
Yep.
And
Right.
what really blew me away about episode 1 of Starfleet Academy, among many things, but what blew me away was seeing it on a giant screen. I was amazed at how well the effects held up and the visual effects held up,
Wow.
considering so many people are gonna watch it on their phone.
Right. Yeah. We,
True.
we we live in the world of like, let me pinch in and
Yeah,
see it. Yeah.
but
Yeah.
seeing it on
Exactly.
the big screen, these streaming shows, and I'm sure if you sat down and watched Rings of Power in a 1,000-seat movie theater, you'd just be like, "Wow, this is not very far off from what Peter Jackson did," and in some cases, it might even be ahead in terms of where visual effects and stuff on
Right.
that
Right.
scale,
Mhm.
Yeah.
But,
Yeah.
yeah, it's not it's in the on the practical acting side, it's not really that different.
Yeah. Gotcha. It's the craft. I dig it. Peter.
Well, speaking a little bit more on the craft, you've had a breadth of roles and shows. Is there Do you have a favorite character that you've played or a favorite type of character that you like to play?
Well, it's gonna sound kinda sappy, and you're gonna think I'm saying it because I'm nostalgically looking at your bridge photo behind you there.
Yeah,
No, I mean,
Oh,
but Kelrick was a really interesting character for me to
yeah.
play.
I would agree.
This kind of combination of, this speaking of Comfior, I mentioned this, another friend at the interview thing had asked me, I sat down with Comfior once because we were doing, like, Shakespeare in the Schools event in Toronto, and he was in the city at the time, and he was talking about how he was working on one of the Thor movies, and it's, like, Kenneth Branagh directing, and it's him, and it's
Mhm.
Anthony
Oh, the
Hopkins.
first one. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yep.
and how, when Kenneth Branagh was talking to them, it was in a kind of, he kept using examples from Shakespeare in
Mhm.
sort of as a shorthand to get everybody on the same page. Yeah, this is kinda like the scene from King Lear when the blah, blah, this I can't recall
Yeah.
exactly the examples, but so it was interesting for me because I remember thinking like, "Oh, wow, so I kind of always felt that Kelrick was somewhere, but he was like part Malvolio from Twelfth Night, this sort
Mhm.
of like kind of comedic character on some level who's really officious and really cares about form and
Mhm.
things being done the proper way. And then, but he's also in combination, which you see in like in episode 6, he's also like one of these great sort of like warrior duke characters or something from the history plays,
Yep.
that when the crap hits the fan, he's there to do his job as a fighter and a warrior and a strategist and all that. So I
Mhm.
kind of, I'd love that he kind of contained those two sides to him, and
Yep.
that there was sort of Kelrick in front of the cadets, and then the audience got to see Kelrick with Nala, and then they saw a different guy
Yeah.
because he did act, he would as a commanding officer. That's not that side of himself he doesn't want anyone to see, but the circumstances force him to reveal
Yeah.
parts of himself that he wishes even Nala didn't see. But
Mhm.
that part of the character made it extremely interesting. Plus, also, just being in the world of these costumes and sets and characters,
Oh,
it does allow you to kind of play like, again, it is a little bit classical. It's a little bit,
Mhm.
I mean, and so many Shakespearean actors have found themselves in the world of Star Trek
right.
with success. between handling the text and also the debate, and it, not being just exclusively action based, but it being so much about debate and philosophy and discussion that you need actors with facility with text and ideas, and it's not just pretty people who look good in slow motion. That's what these shows require. And
Yeah.
so that part of it kind of combined a bunch of my interests and a bunch of, I think, skills I have. And also, I've had a chance to work with some amazing actors in my career. I did a really great movie years ago with called Miss Sloane, and that was, I mean, I had scenes with Sam Waterston and John Lithgow and Jessica Chastain. I mean, it was incredible. But here I am, Paul Giamatti's over there, and almost all my stuff's with Holly Hunter, who I've
Right.
basically grown up as a professional actor from Raising Arizona and the piano on watching, and here I am day after day, scene after scene, season after season, working with one of the absolute legends of Hollywood. I mean, that's a pretty amazing experience.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, and I have to say, as a costume enthusiast, I said when they put out Kelrick's outfit, I want one because that was a very cool,
It's a very
Oh
snazzy
my God,
little
it's
belt and collar, and the Discovery uniforms, as you could tell by I had the Discovery uniform that Peter has. The neck was always such a challenge, because it looks extremely uncomfortable, but it looks good. It
yeah.
just really just as a
I
costumer, it looks
had
amazing.
I had to learn how to wear that outfit actually, because the first few days I wore it, I had incredible neck and back pain because
Oh God,
Yeah.
I didn't
yeah.
know, like I didn't kind of know what to do, and then I kind of had to work on it. And I mean, they built my outfit. They must have built my outfit 4 times from scratch, just as that department just refined things. And I mean, there's really another sad thing about the show ending is, the artisans, the craftspeople who worked on this show, the dedication, the passion, the detail,
Yeah, yeah.
the sort of excellence people were striving for. I mean, I could have worn what I wore on the first day I shot, and I could have still worn it at the end of season 2. And in some ways, it probably wouldn't have made much of a difference on one level, but instead, there were rigorous fittings and refittings and just this desire to make it better,
Yeah. That's
constantly make it better. And
yeah.
that's kind of the standard that Alex set, and that's kind of what everybody was striving to do. So even down to my costume, like it's
Yeah.
in fact, I was hosting something called the CAFCAT Awards, which is basically the um the costume designer awards for television and film in Canada.
Oh.
Yeah.
Hosting it, and my band was backing me up while I was hosting it, and I was able to, because Gersha Phillips was nominated, one of our designers. She was nominated for 2 different things, Captain America and also Section 31. And so as a joke or as a bit in the show, I came out with a big warm up coat on, and then during one of the songs, I started to peel it off, and I had my whole Kelrick outfit on underneath.
Nice.
And that's
Nice.
the only time
Excellent.
it ever left the studio. And someone who works for Star Trek was there, brought it there, and brought it home. Like, I
Right.
didn't
Yep.
take it home. I didn't
Like it
get
was
to, like, lie
like
around
it
with
was
it on my couch. It went
right,
to
it
the
was like it
event,
was Ark of Covenant.
I wrote back. Yes, and and it's not mine to play with. So I wish I could
Yeah.
say, "Oh yeah, I've got my outfit here," but no, sir, it's
Yeah.
not.
I was
Not
just waiting.
not like the
I
other cast who, like, pulls out, "Here, I've
yeah.
got my boots that I took from the set."
I
Yeah,
wish,
that's a
I wish I would have
famous one that
something.
yeah, famous one that Dominic Keating of Enterprise says, "I've got my boots," because we talked it's in the center seat, which is this great documentary we talked about that came out in the last couple of years. He says, "I've got my boots." But or like all the kid like we're waiting for somebody to finally produce those hoodies that all the kids were wearing because
Oh,
those are fantastic. But
the
yeah.
varsity jackets, the red leather jackets. I was
Well,
like, what the heck of the
even
college.
just really the
Yeah.
hoodies, the walking
Yeah,
around
hoodies.
hoodies with the stripes on the shoulder. Oh, it's pretty
But the
cool.
varsity
But
jackets are pretty
yeah,
neat.
the Versace jacket is pretty nice. But Peter and I are a little long in the tooth to dress like that, so
I
that's
know,
more
me
for
too.
the young people.
I can pull it off.
Yeah, Peter, you're not
Yeah,
that old.
yeah.
We're old. You're not that old.
We're we
I mean,
I happen to be a year
I'm
younger
older
than you,
than
Raoul,
I'm
but
older
okay.
than I look, but yeah.
Oh my goodness. So we're starting to we're having such a great time. Oh my gosh. But still I was thinking about SFA and how festive the atmosphere was, and you were talking a little bit about the seriousness of Kelrick's character, but you're around such wacky actors. I mean, you got Tig, who I've been a fan of Tig forever watching her stand up. And Gina, I played pickleball with Gina on the cruise. One of probably the best experience I will ever have. And my wife and I have been on the cruise 3 times. We're going again next year. She's fantastic. But I've also been a huge fan of her stand up forever and ever.
Yeah.
Do they ever do anything that just broke you down? That you had one of
Oh
the
my
classic
God.
SNL breaking moments?
I wrote a little post because it was Tig's birthday a few days ago. And like she's the one who at 4 a.m. when it's like 4 a.m. on a Saturday morning and there's, you know, a page left that we have to shoot and everybody's been going all week. And she's just there, ribbing everybody, and her dry humor is just tearing a strip off everyone, and just beautifully sarcastic. Gina's hilarious, and no, the two of them together, they did a couple of public appearances together, like on chat shows and morning shows and stuff. And I was like, man, you guys got to take this on the road because the two of them together are absolutely hilarious. Yeah, I mean, when you have stand-up comedians who are kind of in the mix, it can be quite interesting, and they're both great actors. And Tig was bringing that like Oded, and bringing that sort of piece of discovery over into our timeline and into our series, which was nice to have those bridge characters. And of course, Bob. Oh my God, like
Man.
Bob and I really became close in this because he's such a cool guy. He sang with my band a couple times
Oh
live.
my
Nice.
gosh.
We've been to the theater. I don't know how many times I would take Bob to see plays. He loves the theater. So we saw his
Yeah.
friend Saul Rubinek here in a play in Toronto.
Oh,
Yeah, we
another Star Trek
saw the
guy.
Star Trek guy. Exactly. So they were the kids are amazing. But getting to know the grown-ups was also really cool for me because the kids are so cool, and we did hang out a little bit, but it's also like they got
Yeah.
a bond among themselves, right?
Hmm.
As someone who spent a lot more time in Toronto than almost any of them, when they first arrived, kids from across the galaxy who had never met each other before, who were bonding together for a very special experience. I'd offer like, hey, if you need any help or you want to know where things are, but they all got settled in really quickly, and they are such a tight group. In fact, a bunch of them are together in Los Angeles now, just hanging out, and so I think it's been good for a lot of them to be together when they got this news.
Oh
Hmm.
boy. Yeah.
They can be together and figure out next steps and what they want to do. And also, like I said, the crazy thing is like we have this whole other season. I don't know how it's
Right.
promoted. I don't know how it'll be shared. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know how that's going to play out. But there's some really cool stuff in season 2. There's some amazing guests. There's some great
Yeah.
performances, and
Bob
yeah,
Yeah, Bob was on the cruise, and of course, I've had great conversations with Bob, and we haven't yet had him on the spotlight. So, if you want to put in a good word for us, we would be very grateful because I've been trying to get him on because I'm a lifelong fan of his, going back to the Wonder Years,
yes,
going back to the
Chuck-
film Interspace in the '80s, which I loved.
yes,
I had a chat with him about that. But he was great on the cruise. But we sat in on his auction. I didn't buy anything because it was
right.
really expensive. But he talked about, hey, something happening in season 2, and he alluded to this, and he alluded to it in one of the other panels. So I was super psyched for season 2. But yeah, you're right. Now there's this different type of vibe about what that's going to look like, and I'm assuming we'll see it next year because that's typically how things
No.
work in streaming Star Trek.
And
But you can,
I do think the way it's built is that I think it'll be satisfying in a different way from season 1, but
mhm,
it's also not going to, I think, like open so many doors that by the end of that season it'll be like, oh well, this doesn't make any sense. It's not
no,
constructed like that at all. It is
good,
like
great,
season 1. I think I can't say much about it, but the where season 1 kind of had a beginning, a middle, and the end in terms of what this season was about,
Hmm.
or a couple of A stories, like an A story and a B story. There's definitely that in season 2, so I think it still will be for a very satisfying watch for people, and has some new stuff in it that's pretty cool. So, I mean, I think we're all kind of excited about that part. It'll be curious to see how that sort of manifests itself in terms of its public face and how it's promoted and all that. I would have no idea, but
right,
it's a good, you know, it's a good time, and I think people who've enjoyed the show will find it different, but also quite satisfying.
right.
Nice.
I love it. All right, Peter's got one more question, and then we're out of here. But yeah, Peter, go for it.
All right. So I not gonna lie, Kelrick is probably my favorite character in the show. Uh, so I kind of gravitate to characters like that.
Yeah.
So how was I mean, you mentioned a little bit about, like, the dichotomy between, like, the comedic and then kind of the military leader, but, like, how was it bringing that character to life? Like, kind of conceptualizing and then, like, coming up with a plan of how to, like, bring him from the page to walking the halls and doing his thing and grimacing when the cadets do something stupid. So
Well, I have a I was able to talk to a naval commandant friend who runs a training academy, which has just kind of happened out of bizarre coincidence. So I had a chance to talk to someone in military leadership who is also involved with basically the training of young naval
mhm,
officers. So that was a great place to start because, you know, in acting, there's kind of this terrible saying that's not really true, but those who can't act teach is sort of the slang
Mm.
yeah,
for teachers. And I had said, well, what was is that what? And this friend of mine knew a lot about the theater and had been an actor long before he'd become heavily involved in the Navy. And I said, hey, is it like that? You know what they say about actors? And he said, no, no, it's absolutely the opposite. People who teach in the military are often the very best that they can find because
mhm,
that's how they want to educate the future of the military. And
yep,
sometimes they're pulling people out of service, out of active duty who don't necessarily want to teach, but if they're ordered to and they believe that they have the right skills. So I kind of had this idea for Kelrick that in some ways, it might have been something that he didn't even really think he wanted to do. And
mhm,
then as he came into it over the years, and I think he's been at the War College for many years, you know, his background, in his previous military background, kind of informed this. And then, he really started to embrace his philosophy of what being a Starfleet officer was, and more important, what it was to be the chancellor of the War College. And the series starts him in a very difficult position, which again is always interesting to play as an actor, where you've basically been the boss, you've basically been in charge, you've had one philosophy about how to do things. Now you have a new person you have to do everything with that the establishment is much more behind and wants to be the new direction of the future. And where do you fit in? You know, what
mhm,
what what
Right.
what will they think of what I'm teaching? What will they, will I become expendable? Will I become old fashioned? One of the things I loved about Kelrick too is I think in some ways for people who are thrown by kind of some of the unconventional vibe of Starfleet Academy in terms of how it was run. You know, uh, I mean, I think the series very consciously addresses the fact that that kind of dynamic by him. The first thing he says to her is, "Why don't you have any shoes on?" I mean,
yep,
it wasn't like it was. And some of the commentary, I thought it was like we didn't notice, or it was a Marxist conspiracy for her to have not have shoes on. And I'm like, guys, the first thing I say to her is, "You can't walk around without shoes on. Like, what are
yep,
you doing?" So I love that Kelrick was someone to kind of represent part of that point of view, which is that, there were ways to do things that worked. And I think when the series starts, he's as much as he would like the idea for Starfleet Academy to work, and as much as he would like for it to be, this is the right time to do it. I think he's skeptical about the world being ready for a place like it. And
mhm,
saying that out loud, Raoul wonders is a little skeptical, perhaps, if the world is ready for a place like it when it comes to the series.
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
Like, in some
It
ways. And
yeah.
it was pushing its boundaries quite far, Starfleet Academy, the actual academy and the actual show, that there
Right.
was kind of a Kelrick represents that person who's like, "Wait a second, this isn't how it's done. This is not how we do it. You can't do it this way." And it was important to have that voice there, and for me, it was super fun to play that person who basically thinks all of it is probably not quite right. It gives you a lot to play. It gives you a lot to
Yeah.
play, when you're the person who's going like, "What the hell is going on here? Why isn't anybody doing this the way we used to?" And I
mhm,
think
Right.
the argument of the show is that, the way we used to do it isn't necessarily the way forward, as difficult as or uncomfortable as that may be. And for Kelrick, he's probably, I would say, of all the characters, he is the most uncomfortable with
mhm,
what this way forward means. And
Yeah.
that's super interesting to play and
Right.
always
Right.
gave me something to be thinking about.
Yeah. God, that's awesome. It's good stuff. Well, this is the part of the show where I would give you a chance to plug, "Hey, man, what do you got coming up?" But I know it's a crazy week, but I know you're very active, and this will be out just in a couple of weeks. So talk to me about some projects you've got going on with your band, or just talk to me about what you're up to in the next couple of weeks.
Yeah, if any of your viewers are or listeners are based in Canada, I'm on a show. I'm doing season 3 of a show called The Trades, which is a completely antithetical show. Well, antithetical to Star Trek, antithetical to Kelrick at least. I play a character who's the engineer of an oil refinery who's a
Mm.
struggling alcoholic and a complete mess.
Oh
Um,
my gosh.
uh,
Yeah, kind of the
but
opposite.
Everything's rough.
I woke up this morning to find out I'd been nominated again for Best Supporting Actor in a Comedy for the Canadian Screen Awards. So that was a real thrill for me.
Congratulations.
And the series has been nominated, and the comedy ensemble's been nominated. So if anybody's into in Canada, you can watch The Trades on Crave. I
Okay.
just did Law and Order: Criminal Intent Toronto. I was in town shooting Star Trek, so I was able to do that.
Fantastic.
And yeah, I'm busy summer playing music. And to be honest, I was part of the reason I was a little. I'll let the your people here know that I got on a little late to this, because I was then now I'm now in that phase that an actor's in of like updating my demo reel and trying to prospect for new work. One of the great joys of being on a show like Star Trek and knowing that you're coming back is it's one of those few times in your life as an actor where even if it would be 2027, you have some work coming, so you're
Yeah.
not in that sort of constant panic that you are as a performer of like, what's my next job? What's my next job? But
Yeah.
I had an audition for an amazing project yesterday, and I thought, okay, this is what we do. We all know this, particularly those of us who've been around for a while, that the phase we are in now is on to the next one.
I love it.
And
Awesome.
that's kind of where I am.
I
Thanks.
love it. Good deal. Well, I will have links for a bunch of that, including back to Randall's page, because I would love to hear you talk to read this book and to learn more about it. But God, man, thanks for making the time to talk with us. You are the first actor that we've talked to that's on a show that for Star Trek that's on the air, because you're still on the air. You still have
That's
a
right.
season coming up,
All
but you're the first one. And
episodes. Yes, all
may
episodes
you be
are available.
yeah. May you be one of many, but yes, here in a lot of places globally, you can find the show on Paramount Plus. But you already know that because people hopefully listen to us. But please put in a good word with us with Bob Picardo.
Well,
But honest to God, man, thank you for being here so much. This has been totally awesome. Listeners, please definitely visit our website at secretfriendsunite.com or patreon.com/secretfriendsunite to listen to all of our spotlights. We've got it going back about a year and a half, talking to awesome people like Raoul. Raoul, thank you very much.
thank you.
This podcast is part of the Secret Friends Unite podcasting network, available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and podcast services around the galaxy, as well as video on our YouTube channel. You can support Secret Friends Unite by becoming a Patreon member, get bonus programs and more over at patreon.com/secretfriendsunite. Join our Discord community for even more discussions on all things geek. For all the latest updates on Secret Friends Unite, make sure to follow us on Threads at secret.friends.unite and visit secretfriendsunite.com. Find our merchandise at TeePublic and Redbubble. Thanks for listening, and may the Force live long and prosper.